Hello again, this is Dr. James Camp from Lee College in Baytown, Texas, and this is Lesson 4B of my series on starting off in C++. Today we're exploring the C++ for loop. So what we want to do today is we're going to do something a little silly. We want to specify a title as a string and then have that title printed with kind of expanded spacing and an underline as shown in the on the screen there. Once again, this requires some skills we haven't learned yet. We have to be able to get the length of a string so that we know how long that dotted line underline needs to be. We need to access individual characters from a string so that we can print the M and then a space and then the Y and then a space and not run it all together. And finally, we need a loop that will count through the characters in the string, which is a for loop. All right, now as always, before we start writing code, we should plan out our program and get a sense of what we need to do. Now, we know that we need to write a for loop, but we actually are going to need two loops, one to print the title and one to print the underline. The title loop is going to print a leading space, or we're going to print a leading space before the loop because we have one extra space in there. And then from I equals 0, which is the start of the string, to length of the string minus 1, and we'll get to why the minus 1 is there in a minute, we're going to print string at I, then a space. So we've got the leading space, and then we've got character 1 space, character 2 space, character 3 space, etc. And then the underline loop, we're going to have a new line, and we're going to print a leading dash to go with the leading space. And then for every character in the string, we're going to print a double dash. Okay, why a double dash? Because above it, we're going to have a character and a space, so we're going to need to put dash, 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 dash. All right, some things we need to know to be able to do this. Some things we need to know are basic string operations in C++. This is probably the thing that varies most from one programming language to another, is how you handle strings. So for a string that we've named str.length with parentheses after it is going to give you the number of characters in the string, or the length of the string. And str at square brackets with an I enclosed is going to give you the I plus 1th character in the string. Now, you keep noticing that I'm using these off by 1 numbers here. Strings, like all lists in C family languages, are 0 based. Wait a minute, this isn't a list, it's a string. Okay, a string can be thought of as just a list of characters, an array of characters. And so, like all lists in C family languages, the first entry in the list is item 0. Okay. To put that in a little more concrete terms, string square brackets 0, which is pronounced string at 0, is actually the first character in the string. And string at n minus 1 is the nth character in the string. Okay. The other thing we need to know how to do is to make a counting loop, or a for loop, in C++. We start with the for, the word for, and then in parentheses we actually have 3 different pieces of the for loop. There's an initialization, then there's a condition, then finally there's an increment, which can also be a decrement or a multiplication or a division. It can be any sort of change, but there has to be something that changes the loop variable between iterations through the loop. And then, of course, inside the curly braces, just like with the while loop, there are things to do while the condition is true. What this looks like practically is usually something like for int I equals 0, that's the initialization, we're setting I to 0, I less than string.length, that's our condition, we're going to keep going as long as I is less than string.length, and then I++ is a typical increment. That's just going to increase I by 1 every time you go through the loop. Okay, so let's go ahead and set up the program. This is a real simple program. It needs the IO stream and string headers to be pound included. We set up int main, and then we see out a prompt, enter your title. We declare a string variable to hold the title, and then we do a get line, which we get from the string library, that uses cin to read in an entire string for title. Okay, all of this should be stuff that you've seen before and are fairly comfortable with. Okay, so writing the first loop, we now get to the point where we're going to be printing out the string itself, the title. So first, it looks better if we insert a blank line between where the user typed their input and the start of the title. So we're going to see out \n, a new line character. Then we need to print a leading space with cout quote space. Okay, so far so good. Then we need to step through the string, printing character space, character space, character space. And that's what the first for loop is for. Here's what that for loop looks like. There's the initialize part. I is going to start at 0, the first position in the string. So if the title is my title, title at 0 will be the capital M that starts my title. Condition, the loop will continue until I reaches title.length. Okay. And then the increment, we will step through the string one letter at a time. I++. Finally, notice the semicolons between parts of the for loop. A lot of people want to put commas in there between the parts of the for loop, or periods or something else, because semicolon usually ends a line. But no, the for loop is set up to use semicolons. Okay. Finally, we need to start a new line with cout end line. Okay. Now, what about the second loop? Well, first we need to print a leading dash with cout dash. Then for each letter in the string, we need to print 2 dashes. So there's a for again. For int I equals 0, I less than title.length, I++, we're going to see out double dash, dash dash. Again, we need to end the output line, so we have a cout end line. Here's what the console output looks like for my title app, given the title Computer Science Greatness, which is hopefully what we're all striving for in this course. You can see it did its job admirably well. So, what have we learned today? We've learned some string operations in C++. We've learned that strings are 0 indexed, so if you want to use the first character in a string, you're going to pull character 0. If you want the nth character in a string, you're going to pull n-1. And we've learned how to write for loops, which is probably the most useful skill that you're going to have in, the most complicated useful skill that you're going to have in writing C++ code, because for loops are not as simple as if statements or while loops. Okay, so now that you've learned about while loops and for loops, you should have you should be ready for a programming assignment in the looping category. I'll have that for you back on our Blackboard page. And until next time, good luck and happy programming.